them. Anna kept her head down as she walked through the small airfield gate, and the morning wind pushed cold air across the runway. The air smelled like dry grass and old fuel, and the kind of metal dust that never truly leaves a place where machines have lived. People looked up from their work when they saw her, and their eyes followed her in a way that made the space feel tighter. Some of them did not bother to hide their smiles. Some of them did not bother to hide their jokes. Anna was used to being watched. She had been a mechanic since she was young enough to hold a wrench without dropping it. She had learned engines before she learned polite small talk. She had learned to listen to a sound and know if it meant trouble. She had learned that the best answer to noise was steady work. Today the noise was louder than usual. It was not the sound of engines. It was the sound of people talking about her like she was not there. It was the sound of a story spreading that did not belong to them. Anna had inherited an old hangar at the edge of the airfield. The hangar sat alone like a forgotten shed beside a long fence line. Its paint had faded until it looked like the sky had washed it out for years. The doors were wide but stuck, and the metal tracks were filled with grit and small stones. A broken sign leaned near the front, and the letters had peeled away. Most people in town said the hangar was worthless. They said it was too old to repair. They said the land was not worth much. They said the only thing inside would be rust and rats and broken parts. They said Tom had left her a problem, not a gift. Tom was the man who had owned the hangar. He was a veteran who did not talk about his past. He lived in a small house near the airfield road and kept his garden neat and quiet. He fixed radios for neighbors and repaired small things without asking for much. People respected him in a distant way, like they respected a closed book they never opened. When he passed away, they spoke kindly for a few days and then moved on. Anna had not moved on. She had been one of the few who visited Tom often. She brought him food when his hands shook too much to cook. She carried heavy boxes when his back grew stiff. She listened when he wanted to talk about engines and weather and small lessons that sounded simple but felt deep. He never treated her like a joke. He never treated her like a visitor in a place she did not belong. He treated her like someone who could finish what she started. That was why the inheritance surprised the town. It did not surprise Anna in the same way. It only made her curious and careful. Tom did not do random things. Tom did not waste effort. If he left her the hangar, it meant he believed it still had a purpose. Anna walked up to the hangar and stopped in front of the doors. A chain hung loose but the lock was new. She took a key from her pocket and held it for a second. She felt the weight of it like a promise. Then she slid it into the lock and turned it slowly. The metal clicked and the sound echoed inside the empty space. Anna pulled the chain away and looped it over a hook. She placed her hands on the door edge and pushed. The door did not move. She pushed again and felt it shift just a little. She tried a third time and the door groaned like it was waking up. A thin line of darkness opened and dust drifted out into the light. Behind her, someone laughed. A man named Ben stood near a tool cart with his arms folded. Ben worked on the airfield trucks and acted like he owned every corner of the place. He spoke loud enough for others to hear. He said she would need a miracle to make that place useful. A few people chuckled and went back to their tasks. Anna did not turn around. She did not answer. She pushed the door again and it slid farther along the track. The sound was rough and uneven but it moved. She kept pushing until the opening was wide enough to step through. Inside, the hangar smelled like old oil and dry wood. Light came through high windows and painted long rectangles on the floor. Dust floated in those beams like tiny slow snow. The air was still and cool. The space felt larger than it looked from outside. Anna walked carefully and let her eyes adjust. Along the left wall were shelves stacked with boxes and jars. Along the right wall were cabinets with faded labels. A workbench sat near the center with a thick wooden top marked by scratches and stains. A red stool stood beside it like someone had just stood up and walked away. Near the back, 3 large shapes were covered with heavy canvas sheets. The sheets were tied down with rope, and the rope knots were neat and careful. Anna stopped there and listened. She did not expect sound, but she listened anyway. The hanger remained quiet. She moved to the workbench and ran her fingers along the edge. The wood was worn but solid. A small notebook lay near the corner under a thin layer of dust. Anna lifted it and opened it slowly. The pages were filled with tidy writing and small diagrams. The dates were recent, even though Tom had been sick for months. Anna felt a tightness in her chest that was not fear. It was the feeling of being trusted with something that mattered. She set the notebook down and looked around with more focus. A calendar hung on the wall near the door. On several days there were small marks in the same spot, like a reminder. Beside the calendar was a list written on thick paper. The list had simple words like oil, seals, filters, fabric, paint. The handwriting was Tom's. He had planned. He had kept working. Anna walked to the shelves and started opening boxes. Some held bolts sorted by size. Some held metal washers wrapped in paper. Some held spare parts that were labeled with care. Nothing looked random. Nothing looked abandoned. Anna pulled a broom from a corner and began to sweep. The dust rolled into small clouds and then settled again. She swept anyway. She cleared a path from the door to the workbench. She cleared a path toward the covered shapes in the back. Outside, the airfield sounded busy. Inside, the hangar felt like a separate world. Anna liked that. She liked places where work spoke louder than people. She spent the next hours cleaning and sorting. She found a toolbox with her name written on a strip of tape. The tape was old, but the letters were clear. Anna stared at it for a moment and swallowed hard. She had never brought a toolbox here before. Tom had prepared one for her anyway. She opened it and saw tools arranged in a way that made sense. A wrench set matched the sizes she used most. A small flashlight sat in the corner. A pair of gloves rested on top, new and unused. Anna lifted the gloves and felt the soft inside fabric. It felt like a quiet hand on her shoulder. Later, she heard footsteps near the door. A woman named Mary stood in the opening, holding a small bag. Mary ran the little cafe by the airfield road. She was not loud like Ben. She was not rude, but she was careful. She looked around the hangar with surprise. Mary said she thought Anna might forget to eat. Mary placed the bag on the workbench and looked at Anna's dusty hands. Anna nodded and thanked her. Mary did not smile much, but her eyes softened. She said Tom would have liked seeing the doors open again. After Mary left, Anna ate slowly and then returned to work. She swept the far corner and noticed the floor sounded different there. It was a small change, like a hollow spot. Anna knelt and brushed dust away. A metal ring was set into the floor, almost hidden. She tugged it and a square panel lifted with a stiff scrape. Under the panel was a narrow storage space. Inside was a metal box, dark and heavy, with a simple lock. Anna lifted it out and set it on the workbench. Her heart beat a little faster, not with fear, but with curiosity. Tom had hidden something here. Tom had left a locked box in her hangar. Anna stared at the lock and reached into her pocket for the key ring Tom's lawyer had given her. There were several keys and she had not tested them all. She selected one that looked older than the others and held it up to the light. Then she placed it into the lock and turned it slowly. The lock gave a quiet click, and the box opened. Anna stood still for a long moment as the metal box sat open on the workbench, and the quiet of the hangar felt heavier than before. Inside the box were papers folded with care, a small cloth pouch, and another letter written in Tom's steady handwriting. Anna picked up the letter first because it felt like the heart of everything else. She unfolded it slowly and began to read while standing beside the workbench. Tom wrote that some things are not meant to be explained loudly. He wrote that some work only survives when it is done quietly and with patience. He wrote that the hangar was never just a building to him. It was a place where he kept promises he made long ago. Tom explained that during his years of service he learned that help often arrives late for people who live far from main roads. He learned that small aircraft could mean the difference between waiting and surviving. He learned that machines can serve people best when pride is left outside the door. He wrote that the hangar was built for service and not for show. He wrote that he had been preparing it for someone who would continue that purpose without turning it into noise. Then he wrote Anna's name again, carefully and clearly. Tom said he chose her because she worked without needing praise. He said he watched how she fixed engines like she was listening to them speak. He said she respected tools and space and silence. He said she did not rush what mattered. Anna felt her eyes grow warm, but she did not let the feeling stop her. She folded the letter and set it beside the box. Next she opened the cloth pouch. Inside was a smaller key and a metal tag with a simple marking. The marking matched a symbol painted faintly on the far wall of the hangar near the back corner. Anna walked toward that wall slowly. The symbol was old and almost hidden under layers of dust and paint. It was not decoration. It was a guide. She looked along the wall and noticed a narrow door she had not paid attention to before. The door blended into the metal panels and had no handle. There was only a small keyhole. Anna took the smaller key and placed it into the lock. She turned it and felt the door release. She pulled gently and the door opened inward. Behind it was a narrow space with low lighting. The smell inside was cleaner than the rest of the hangar. The floor was swept and the shelves were organized. This room had been used recently. Inside the room were more manuals, maps, and neatly stacked equipment. There were radios wrapped in cloth. There were cases marked with clear labels. There were notebooks filled with checklists and notes written in the same calm handwriting. Anna realized this was the planning room. This was where Tom prepared everything quietly. This was where decisions were made without an audience. She spent hours reading and sorting. The notes described routes over nearby mountains. They described weather patterns and safe landing spots. They described ways to approach villages without causing fear or confusion. Tom had thought of everything. As the light outside began to fade, Anna stepped back into the main hangar. She looked again at the three large shapes covered in canvas. Her hands moved almost on their own as she untied the first rope. The canvas slid away slowly and revealed the nose of a small aircraft. The metal underneath was clean and cared for. The paint was simple and strong. This was not a showpiece. This was a working machine. Anna moved around it carefully. She checked the surface with her eyes and hands. She saw fresh seals and properly tightened bolts. She saw care in every detail. She uncovered the second shape and found spare wings stored safely. She uncovered the third and found a cart with tools and fuel equipment arranged with precision. The hangar no longer felt abandoned. It felt active even in silence. The next morning, Anna returned early. The airfield was already awake and engines hummed in the distance. A few people noticed the hangar doors were fully open now. Ben walked by and slowed his step. He looked inside longer than he meant to. He said nothing and kept walking. Anna worked through the morning checking systems and reading logs. She tested switches and cables. She cleaned contacts and replaced small worn parts. She worked with calm focus. By midday, Mary returned with coffee. She stood near the door and watched quietly. She said she did not know the hangar looked so alive inside. Anna nodded and kept working. Mary asked what Anna planned to do with the place. Anna said she planned to keep it working. Mary nodded like that answer made sense. Later that day, an older man named Paul came by. Paul had flown for years before retiring. He had known Tom well. He stopped when he saw the aircraft. Paul stepped closer and ran his hand gently along the metal. His face changed as recognition settled in. He asked where Anna found it. Anna said Tom left it here. Paul stood quiet for a long moment. He said Tom had spoken once about building something useful. He said Tom never finished stories when they became too personal. Paul asked if the aircraft was ready. Anna said it would be soon. That evening, Anna stayed late again. She sat on the red stool and read more of Tom's notes. She realized the hangar was meant to respond quickly. It was meant to be ready when roads failed and time mattered. She felt the weight of that responsibility settle on her shoulders. It was not fear that came with it. It was focus. Over the next days, Anna worked without rest. She cleaned and tested. She labeled and repaired. She followed every instruction Tom left and added her own careful checks. The town continued to talk. Some said she was wasting time. Some said she would sell everything once she realized the cost. Anna did not answer any of it. One afternoon a storm rolled in unexpectedly. Clouds gathered fast and the wind shifted. Anna stood near the hangar door and watched the sky. She remembered notes Tom wrote about sudden weather changes. Her radio crackled with distant voices. A call came through about a village cut off by flooding roads. There was concern but no clear plan. Anna looked at the aircraft and then at the radio. Her heart beat steady and strong. She knew the hangar was no longer waiting. It was being called. She reached for the checklist Tom had prepared for this moment. Her hands did not shake. The laughter that once followed her felt very far away. Anna stood beside the aircraft as the radio continued to speak in broken pieces of information, and the wind pushed harder against the open hangar doors. The message was not dramatic, but it was serious enough to change the mood of the airfield. A small village beyond the hills had lost road access due to rising water and unstable ground. A patient there needed fast transport and waiting was not an option. Anna picked up the checklist and read every line slowly. She did not rush, even though time mattered. She trusted preparation more than speed. She moved around the aircraft and checked each section with calm focus. Fuel levels were correct and seals were tight. Controls moved smoothly under her hands. Every sound the machine made felt honest. People on the airfield began to notice what was happening. Mary stood near the fence with worry on her face. Ben stopped his work again and stared openly this time. Others gathered without speaking much. Anna stepped back and took a breath. She knew she would need a pilot. She also knew exactly who to ask. She walked toward the small office near the runway and found Paul sitting alone inside. He looked up when she entered and read her expression before she spoke. She told him the aircraft was ready and the call was real. Paul stood without hesitation. Paul had not flown in years, but his hands remembered more than his words ever did. He walked with Anna back toward the hangar and his steps felt steady and sure. When he saw the aircraft again, his eyes filled with quiet respect. He said Tom would have been proud. Anna nodded once and handed him the checklist. Together they prepared for departure. Anna handled the final inspections while Paul reviewed the route. The wind remained strong but manageable. The sky looked heavy but not closed. People watched as the aircraft rolled forward. There was no laughter now. There were no jokes. There was only attention and silence. As the aircraft lifted from the ground, Anna watched until it became a small shape against the sky. She felt the hangar suddenly empty again, but not lonely. Time moved slowly after that. Anna cleaned tools and organized papers, but her mind stayed with the flight. Mary stayed nearby and offered quiet company. The radio crackled hours later with a calm voice. The landing was successful. The patient was safe. Relief moved through the airfield like a deep breath finally released. When the aircraft returned as evening approached, people gathered again. This time they stood closer. This time they looked at Anna differently. Paul stepped down and placed a hand on the aircraft with care. He said the machine flew like it was meant to. He said Tom built it right. Anna closed the hangar doors later that night with tired arms and a clear heart. She sat on the red stool and rested for a moment. The next days passed quickly. Calls came asking questions. Some asked about the aircraft. Some asked about the hangar. Some asked about Anna. She answered only what mattered. Volunteers began to appear quietly. A mechanic named Leo offered help without asking for credit. A fuel worker named Sam checked supplies and left notes. No one laughed anymore. Ben approached Anna one morning and spoke carefully. He said he was wrong. Anna nodded and returned to her work. She focused on improving systems and updating records. She read Tom's notes again and again. She added her own observations in the margins. One afternoon, a delivery arrived with parts Tom had ordered months earlier. The boxes were labeled with the Hangar address. Anna smiled at the timing. She worked late that night installing improvements and cleaning every surface. The hangar felt alive again in a quiet, steady way. Paul visited often and shared stories about Tom without drama. He spoke about early flights and hard lessons. Anna listened and learned. The airfield began to treat the hangar as something important. They stopped calling it old. They stopped calling it useless. Another call came weeks later and then another. The aircraft flew when needed and rested when it should. Anna made sure of that balance. She placed a small plaque near the entrance with Tom's name and a simple message. Service continues. One evening Anna stood outside the hangar watching the sun sink low. Mary joined her and said the place felt different now. Anna agreed. The hangar was no longer waiting. It was working. And the town understood at last. Anna woke before sunrise as she had done every day since the hangar became active again, and the quiet morning felt familiar and steady. The road to the airfield was empty, and the sky carried a soft color that promised a clear day. When she unlocked the hangar doors, the metal felt cool under her hands, and the space welcomed her like a trusted place. She began with routine checks because routine created safety, and safety allowed service to continue. She checked fuel levels and cleaned tools and reviewed logs from the last flight. Each task connected her to the purpose Tom had protected for so long. The hangar no longer felt hidden. People passed by with respectful nods. Some stopped to watch her work in silence. Anna did not seek attention, and she did not avoid it either. She focused on keeping the place ready. Mary arrived later with food and stayed to talk quietly. She said the town had changed how it spoke about the hangar. She said people now spoke with care instead of doubt. Anna listened but did not smile much. She knew respect was earned through time and consistency. As weeks passed, the hangar became a place people trusted. Emergency calls came from different areas. Some flights were short and some were long. Every flight followed careful planning. Paul continued to fly when needed and helped train younger pilots who came quietly to learn. Anna taught mechanics who wanted to understand the aircraft systems. She shared knowledge freely and without pride. One afternoon, a young girl visited with her father. The girl stared at the aircraft with wide eyes. She asked Anna how machines could help people. Anna explained simply and honestly. The girl listened closely and nodded like the answer mattered. That evening Anna found another letter hidden in Tom's old notebook. It was shorter than the first. It said that the greatest work is often unseen. It said that the right hands matter more than loud voices. Anna folded the letter and placed it beside the first one. The hangar became part of daily life at the airfield. It was no longer the old place at the edge. It was the place people depended on when things went wrong. Ben worked nearby often now and spoke with respect. He helped when asked and learned when corrected. He no longer tried to control the space. Anna noticed small changes everywhere. People kept the area cleaner. They spoke softer near the hangar doors. One night a strong storm hit the region. Roads flooded and power failed in several areas. The hangar lights stayed on through backup systems Tom had prepared long ago. Calls came quickly. Anna moved with calm purpose. She checked systems and reviewed weather data. Paul arrived without being asked. The flight that night was difficult but safe. When the aircraft returned, the storm had begun to fade. People gathered quietly and waited. When Paul stepped down and nodded, relief passed through everyone present. Anna closed the hangar doors slowly after the aircraft was secured. She leaned against the door for a moment and felt tired in a good way. The next morning the town council visited the airfield. They spoke about support and recognition. They offered funding and public statements. Anna listened and thanked them. She asked that the hangar remain focused on service instead of attention. They agreed. A small ceremony was held weeks later without noise or display. The plaque near the entrance was polished and flowers were placed beside it. Paul spoke a few words about Tom. Mary spoke about quiet work. Anna stood beside the hangar doors and felt complete. As seasons changed, the hangar remained steady. Snow fell and melted. Winds came and passed. The aircraft flew when needed and rested when it should. One evening Anna sat alone inside the hangar after everyone had left. The red stool felt familiar beneath her. The tools rested in their places. She thought about the laughter that once followed her. It felt distant and unimportant now. She looked at the hangar and understood that trust had replaced doubt. Anna locked the doors and stepped into the quiet night. The airfield lights glowed softly. The hangar stood strong at the edge of the runway. A promise fulfilled.